Welcome to the deep dive. Pull up a seat or maybe, adjust your lumbar support because today we're diving deep into something really critical, but maybe not talked about enough, the health realities facing truck drivers. Yeah, it's not just about trucks and schedules, it's about the people, the actual well being of the folks keeping everything moving. We're digging into a pretty important piece of research today. It's a study from the BMC Public Health Journal. And we're also looking at a breakdown, sort of a summary from the Orium's Fit Research Digest blog, which makes it a bit easier to digest. So our mission here is to unpack the science, really understand the health challenges drivers like you face, and figure out what it all means for you out there on the road. We want you to know the real costs, physical and mental, that this job can bring. And honestly, some of the findings are, well, they're quite startling. When you look at the raw numbers, it's clear the road is tough, not just on the truck, but on the driver. Here's where it gets really interesting or maybe concerning. Did you know the study found almost 4 out of 5 drivers they surveyed were overweight or obese? Just that one stat alone, it really makes you stop and think. And look, as we talk about these significant challenges, we'll also touch on how knowing this stuff is pushing people to look for ways to support their well-being, especially when you're stuck sitting for so long. We'll mention how places like the Orium's Fit Research Digest blog are sharing this data, and yeah, how the Orium's Fit brand itself offers some wellness tools, things some drivers are trying for stiffness, circulation issues, stuff like that. It's about knowing your options.
That's exactly right. And this study, it gives us a really valuable snapshot. It was a national study in Australia done between 2019 and 2020. They surveyed a large group, 1,390 truck drivers, so a decent sample size. They used online questionnaires asking about general health, psychological distress, workability, and that sort of thing, health-related quality of life, too. And importantly, they specifically looked at the difference between long-haul drivers, guys doing 500 kilometers or more a day, and short-haul drivers covering less than that, which is smart because the jobs really can be quite different day to day.
Okay, gotcha. So a big group, questionnaires, and comparing the long haulers versus the short haulers. Let's jump into the physical health stuff first. You dropped that nearly 80% overweight or obese figure right at the start. That just feels incredibly high.
It is high. It's definitely one of the standout findings. Across all the drivers, 79.5% were overweight or obese. That breaks down to 25.2% overweight and a really substantial 54.3% obese. And just for context, the average for Australian men overall is around 70% overweight or obese. So yeah, drivers in this study were significantly higher than average.
Okay, so noticeably higher than the general male population. What else physically?
Well, chronic health conditions were another big one. Nearly 3 out of 10 drivers, 29.5%, reported having 3 or more diagnosed chronic health conditions.
3 or more. Okay, that sounds like a lot for one person to manage. How does that compare?
That's where it gets really concerning. The study points out that this rate, having 3 or more chronic conditions, is almost 4 times higher than the average for the general Australian population.
Wow, 4 times. That's not a small difference. That's a massive potential health disaster waiting to happen for a lot of drivers.
It really underscores the unique burden. And the most common things reported, pretty much what you might expect, sadly. Back problems were number 1, hitting 34.5% of drivers, then high blood pressure at 25.8%, and mental health problems reported by 19.4%. And on top of diagnosed issues, chronic pain, like pain lasting over 3 months, was reported by 44% of drivers. Almost half.
Man. Okay, let's just recap that. Almost 80% overweight or obese. Nearly a third dealing with 3 or more chronic illnesses, 4 times the average rate. And almost half struggling with chronic pain. For someone whose entire job depends on being physically able to drive for hours, these aren't just numbers on a page. These sound like huge, potentially career-ending challenges. It feels like managing health problems becomes part of the job description for so many.
It paints a tough picture, absolutely.
Okay.
And the physical side is only half the story. The study also dug into mental health, and the findings there were also quite stark. Half, a full 50% of the drivers reported experiencing some level of psychological distress. That's moderate or severe distress.
50%. Half the drivers feeling moderate or severe distress.
Yes. And again, compare that. For working-age Australian men, generally, it's closer to 1 in 3. So again, significantly higher rates of psychological strain among drivers. Looking closer at that 50%, 36.7% felt moderate distress, and 13.3% experienced severe psychological distress. That's a really tough state to be in day after day. And reflecting all this, nearly 30% of drivers, 29.9% actually, rated their own general health as just poor or fair.
Okay, half experiencing distress, over 13% severe. That's heavy. We often focus on the sitting, the physical wear and tear, but clearly the mental load is just as big a deal. The isolation maybe, the pressure, schedules, traffic, it all adds up, doesn't it?
It seems to. And this is where comparing long haul and short haul gets interesting again. The type of driving seems linked to different primary risks. For the long-haul drivers, those physical issues seemed, well, more pronounced. They were significantly more likely to be obese, 63% compared to 51% for short haul, and chronic pain lasting over a year. That was higher too, 40% for long haul versus about 31.5% for short haul. And the likely culprits mentioned are things like, yeah, long isolated hours, terrible sleep patterns or sleep hygiene, and just less access to healthy food or places to move around when you're out there for days.
Right. Makes sense. Long hours, isolation, poor options.
But then for the short-haul drivers, something else stood out.
Hmm.
A higher percentage reported severe psychological distress. That was 15.2% for short haul, compared to 10.4% for long haul.
How interesting. So less isolation maybe, but more severe distress. Why might that be?
Well, the sources suggest things like constant high-density traffic, which is incredibly stressful, right? Plus, intense time pressures, juggling multiple deliveries, and they even mentioned interactions with the public, sometimes difficult ones, as a source of stress or even safety concerns for short-haul drivers.
Huh. So it's not just one story for all drivers. If you're listening and you drive long haul, maybe the bigger fight is the physical stuff, weight, chronic pain, sleep. But if you're short haul, dealing with city traffic, tight deadlines, maybe difficult customers, that mental strain could be the bigger daily battle for your well-being. Knowing your specific risks seems key.
Absolutely. And the study went even deeper, looking at what factors seem to predict these poor outcomes. For psychological distress, age was a big one. Younger drivers under 35 had much higher odds, like 4.3 times higher odds of severe psychological distress compared to older drivers over 55.
Younger drivers more distressed. Any idea why?
The study didn't fully explore the why, but it could be many things, different life pressures, maybe less developed coping mechanisms, perhaps different support networks, but the correlation was strong. And the other huge predictor for both distress and lower quality of life was having multiple chronic conditions. If you had 3 or more diagnosed conditions, your odds of severe psychological distress skyrocketed, more than 7 times higher for long-haul drivers. And for short-haul drivers with 3 or more conditions, it was over 14 times higher odds of severe distress.
Yeah.
A massive link.
14 times. Just wow.
Yeah, and those multiple conditions also hit quality of life hard for both groups. They used a measure called a disutility score, basically, how much health problems negatively impact your life. Having 3 or more conditions was linked to a 16% increase in this negative score, a big hit to perceived health and life quality. And for short-haul drivers specifically, just being overweight or obese was also linked to that reduced quality of life.
It really drives home that connection, doesn't it? Physical problems aren't just physical. They hammer your mental health, they reduce your quality of life. It sounds like a really vicious cycle. The job contributes to physical issues. Those issues make you more vulnerable mentally. And then being distressed probably makes it even harder to manage the physical stuff. You really have to look at the whole picture.
Exactly. And this matters on a huge scale. Here's a quick fact from the study's intro that kind of blew my mind. Demand for global freight transport. It's estimated to triple by 2050.
Triple.
Triple, which just shows how incredibly essential this industry is and why driver health isn't just a personal issue. It's critical for, well, everyone. And we need healthy drivers.
That really puts it in perspective. Okay, so given these really significant challenges, the weight, the chronic conditions, the pain, the mental stress, and the fact the job itself often limits movement and healthy choices, it makes total sense that drivers would be looking for ways to actively support their physical well-being despite the job's constraints, trying to counteract all that sitting, which is why you hear about folks exploring different tools, maybe personal wellness strategies, things like portable EMS devices, electrical muscle stimulation, or massage guns, even simple back stretchers.
Right. And when you look at the sources discussing these, like the Orium's Fit Research Digest blog where this study was summarized, they explain the thinking behind them. For example, EMS technology, it's designed to potentially help with problems from sitting so much. Things like maybe reducing stiffness, helping stimulate blood flow, getting muscles firing that aren't getting used. Massage guns obviously target muscle soreness, tension, which we saw as a huge issue, especially chronic pain. And back stretchers aim right at those back problems, nearly 35% reported. It's about finding practical ways to maybe give the body some support when regular exercise or stretching just isn't feasible on the road. They aren't magic cures, but they aim to help manage the physical effects.
Exactly. So if you're listening and you're dealing with that stiffness after hours in the cab or maybe poor circulation, muscle aches, that nagging back, and you're thinking about trying some kind of supportive tool, it helps to know what's out there. The Orium's Fit brand, for instance, which was mentioned alongside the study breakdown we saw, is one example in this area. The sources we looked at mentioned they're Australian owned. They've won Best Product of the Year a couple of times on productreview.com.au, which is notable. They also talk about having thousands of global users, lots of five-star reviews, and offering a limited conditional lifetime warranty on their main products bought at full price. These are just points, factors that might make them a brand worth considering if you are looking into investing in something to potentially help manage some of the specific physical challenges this research highlights. It's about exploring your choices.
So just to quickly wrap up the core findings from our deep dive today, the research is pretty clear. Truck drivers face much higher health risks than many other folks. High rates of overweight, obesity, lots of chronic conditions, especially back problems, high blood pressure. Chronic pain is a major issue, particularly for long haul. And psychological distress is also very common, maybe hitting short-haul drivers harder in its severe form, and definitely impacting younger drivers and those with existing health problems more. The job takes a toll, physically and mentally.
Yeah, it's a heavy list. But importantly, the study isn't just doom and gloom. It really points towards the need for action, for tailored strategies, things focused on diet, exercise, managing those chronic conditions, and the mental stress, but within the unique trucking environment. Science is showing us the problem, which hopefully helps point towards real solutions that actually work for drivers.
Definitely. And if you want to read the original research yourself, the Orium's Fit Research Digest blog, which, again, summarized these findings nicely, has direct links to the full study in BMC Public Health. It's a good place to start if you want all the details.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd encourage you to check out the Orium's Fit Research Digest blog. Find that link, see what other insights they might have. And of course, if you're curious about the kinds of wellness tools we talked about, the EMS, massage guns, back stretchers, you could visit the Orium's Fit website to see what they offer and learn more. So here's a final thought to leave you with as you navigate those roads. This research clearly links driver health to driver safety and effectiveness, which matters to everyone. So what truly innovative, maybe even community-led solutions need to be created by drivers, for drivers right now, to build a genuinely healthier future out there? What needs to shift?
And just before we finish, the crucial reminder from our sources. This conversation is for informational and recreational purposes only. It is absolutely not medical advice. The information is based on research and related content, but please always consult a qualified healthcare professional for any health concerns, for diagnosis, or for treatment options tailored to you. Your health is number one, so talk to your doctor.